Xunzi was born late in the Warring States period in the state of Jiao, central to the lands then part of the common cultural milieu of the decaying corpse of the Zhou feudalistic system. He spent most of his young adulthood studying at the Xisha Academy in the state of Qi, the center of learning which had supported such luminaries as Zhao Yang, Zhuangzi, and his ideological rival Mencius. It was from this rich ideological melting pot that one of the most systematic of the early Confucian thinkers emerged. Much like the founder of his school, Confucius, Xunzi spent a large portion of his life after the academy wandering between the courts of the late warring states, looking for an opportunity to put his ideas into practice. However, like Confucius, the opportunity never truly arose. It is possible he lived long enough to see the ideas and machinations of his two alleged pupils, Li Shi and Han Feizi, drive the state of Qin onwards towards the bloody conquest of the territory which would come to bear their name, China, and the subsequent attempts to suppress alternate systems of thought under the new regime. Xunzi had a metaphysical view of the world based upon naturalism and informed by an anti-teleological worldview. By this, I mean that Xunzi rejected the previous claims of thinkers, such as Mencius, that heaven had a grand scheme for the world, rather that instead it meandered on, purposelessly. As such, Xunzi rejected omens and supernatural phenomena to explain the world, in particular taking to task the Moists, who appealed to supernatural surveillance and punishment as a mechanism for social control. Xunzi, having unmoored his metaphysics from the teleological viewpoint, had a rather dim view of human nature, rejecting Mencius's claim that humanity was essentially good. For Xunzi, the driving force of humans was self-interest. Xunzi saw any political reform that didn't take into account what he saw as the self-evident truth of human nature as destined for failure. Once again, the Moists fall into his cross-sights, as he saw them as rejecting innate human desires such as music, family, and personal wealth. It has often been surmised that Xunzi simply saw human nature as evil, although his position is somewhat more complicated than this. For instance, even though he saw our base nature as self-interested, he didn't think that our actions were determined by this. For Xunzi, the affirmation of Mencius as to the innate goodness of humanity not only was not borne out in the facts, but would remove the ability for individuals to strive towards goodness. Instead, Xunzi saw an almost limitless opportunity for self-growth. To quote, "Through steaming and bending, you can make wood straight as a plumb line into a wheel, and after its curve conforms to the compass, even when parched under the sun, it will not become straight again, because the steaming and bending have made it a certain way. Likewise, when wood comes under the incline, it becomes straight, and when metal is brought to the whetstone, it becomes sharp. The gentleman learns broadly, and examines himself thrice daily, and then his knowledge is clear, and his conduct is without fault." Faced with the challenge of reshaping the self, Xunzi seeks to rehabilitate ritual, which one would think he would have rejected along with the soothsaying, fortune-telling, and folk magic. Once divested of its magical and supernatural connotations, Xunzi saw ritual as a bridle which could tame the selfish heart of human nature, bending and shaping the individual the way a gardener trims, shapes, and trains the branches of a tree. Beyond this, he saw ritual as providing an outlet valve for human emotion, with ritual providing and acting as a language through which feelings could be appropriately expressed. This functionalist understanding of ritual saw it primarily as a psychological and social instrument with which we could commence what Xunzi saw as the unending journey towards self-cultivation. To quote, "When does learning begin? When does learning end? I say, its order begins with the recitation of the classics and ends with studying ritual. Its purpose begins with becoming a noble man, and it ends with becoming a sage. If you truly accumulate effort for a long time, then you will advance. Learning proceeds until death, and only then does it stop." It is key to understand both Xunzi's conception of human nature and ritual to understand his conception of society. For Kunze, the only thing which separated humans from animals was the artificial construct of society, which had been crafted by the sage kings of the past to curtail the worst inclinations of humanity. In this sense, Kunze saw culture as purely constructed. To quote, "The children of the Han, Yu, Yi, and Mo peoples all cry with the same sound at birth, but when grown they have different customs, because teaching makes them be this way." Despite a recognition of the artificiality of culture, Kunze saw it as necessary and praised the social stratification that it brought about, seeing this division as necessary for humans to flourish. To quote, "Humans are not as strong as oxen or as fast as horses, but oxen and horses are used by them. How is this so? I say, it is because humans are able to form communities, while the animals cannot. Why are humans able to form communities? I say, it is because of social divisions. How can social divisions be put into practice? I say, it is because of standards of righteousness." Kunze drew on the sophisticated logical devices of the school of names and the elegant prose of Zhuangzi to deliver biting critiques of Mencius and the Moists, advancing a complex interpretation of Confucian ethics and politics. However, despite the sophisticated thought and prose in Kunze's work, he was considered a much more minor figure historically when compared to the looming figure of Mencius, whom he had sought to critique. Moreover, the association of Kunze with his supposed students, Li Shi and Han Feizi, saw the staining of his reputation, with thinkers linking his conceptions of self-interested human nature with the real politic of the legalist tradition. Regardless, Kunze is both interesting in the counterpoint that he plays to Mencius, but also in the exhortation that he provides towards self-improvement.